Welcome to today's class. Today we shall discuss an essay. The title of the essay is Six Papers on Wheat and the essayist is Joseph Addison. So let us first find out what he means by wit. Wit is the ability to use words or ideas in an amusing, clever and imaginative way. So if a person uses words in an amusing way, in a fanciful way, in a clever way, we call him witty. So a person who has a superior intellect can be called witty. तो हिंदी में हम ऐसे बोल सकते हैं, विट का मतलब है ज्ञान, विट का मतलब है बुद्धि, विट का मतलब है बुद्धि तीक्ष्णता, sharp intellect, sharp intellect. So let us find out what Joseph Addison talks about in this particular essay. As you all know, Joseph Addison wrote the first essay of Six Papers on Wheat on the 7th May 1711. It was the 58th essay of the Spectators, and all of you know the Idler and the Spectator. These were periodical essays which were published in the 18th century. If you remember correctly, 18th century was the age of periodical essays. When Spectator was published for the first time in 1711 and 1712, it continued its publication through 1712. 555 essays were published and some 80 essays were published in 1714. So altogether this makes 635 essays. Out of the first 555 essays which were published during 1711 and 1712, 251 were contributed by Steele, and Addison published 274 of them. Addison wrote 274 of them, and the rest were contributed by Alexander Pope and other minor essayists of the time. Now the essayist says that wit is something that has been admired by writers, that has been admired by people, but it is very little understood. It is not correctly understood. Everybody appreciates wit, but writers do not understand what exactly wit is. No writer has dealt with it in a detailed or comprehensive manner, and therefore he wants to write about it. He says some writers have written as if they by chance came upon this word during the course of their writing. So Addison says some writers have dealt with this particular topic, that is wit, but they have written about it in such a way, haphazard way, that it seems as if they were writing on some other topic and they by chance stumbled into, or they by chance came upon this particular topic and they wrote something on that. But there is nobody who has written 5 or 6 essays and completely devoted those essays to wit. Others have used flourishing language and some impassioned expression without going to the bottom of the matter. Others have tried to explain things. They have used very flashy language, hi-fi language, but they have not been successful in explaining the thing in great detail. So Addison says, I want to write for an entire week so that my thoughts are not broken or interrupted. So from Monday till Saturday, he writes these essays. Then he talks about the purpose of writing this essay. He says, I expect that the society will be changed for the better at the end of the week. So this is the first purpose. He says, England is going to change. Once people read the essays, they will be able to understand the difference between extraordinary writing and ordinary writing. He wants to banish vice and ignorance from Great Britain. He says some people, they have revived certain things which were in vogue, which were available, or which were written, some forms of writing which were written hundreds of years ago. They are reviving those, they are bringing it back once again, and they think they are doing a great thing. But through these essays, I will show what those old things are, what those old writings are, and why I don't give much importance to them. Why I don't give, you know, I don't want everybody to lay much stress on them. Addison presented his characters as exemplary of the polite manners that he sought to describe and defend in his works. So Addison wants to say that writing must be polite. I am in favor of polite writing. I am in favor of polite manners. And therefore, I want to defend those works which are acceptable, which present human being in a polite way. Now, he again says that my purpose is also to trace out the history of false wit as they have prevailed in different ages. So you might be asked a question, what does Addison, or what are the different forms of writing which Addison calls false wits? So now let us find out what he calls false wits. He says, last winter there were attempts to revive some of those antiquated modes of wit that have long been exploded out of the commonwealth of letters. So last winter, some writers of England, they wanted to revive or bring back those forms of writing which had become extinct. I mean, nobody was using them. For hundreds of years, nobody was using them. Nobody was writing in those styles. And then there is a revival. And then some writers are trying to bring it back. There were several satires. Satires, you make fun of somebody, write something, making fun of someone. You use the satire. Of course, the purpose of satire is correction of vices in the society. And panegyric is a public speech or a published text in praise of somebody or something. So something that has been written to praise somebody, handed about in an acrostic. What is an acrostic? Acrostic is a poem or the other composition in which the first letter of each line spells out a word. So you take the first letters, just as you say, suppose teacher, Teacher, T for something, E for something, A for something, and then that makes the teacher. So by these means, some of the arrant blockheads began to entertain ambitious thoughts. And the writer is saying that some writers of England, they have been reviving these antiquated or old forms of art. They have been writing those things, and you know they want to show to the world that they are great people, that by reviving those forms of art, they have been doing a service, great service to English literature. But actually, they are not doing any service to, not doing any great service to English literature. And I will justify why they are not doing a great service to English literature. Now, he gives example of what he considers to be falsehood. The first species of falsehood, he gives an example of that. This was produced by minor Greek poets, and the essayist says that some of them have lived since the day Iliad was written. Iliad was written by Homer, the Greek poet Homer. And when did he write it? At about 750 BC. So these resemble the figure of an egg. Poems written in the shape of an egg, a pair of wings, an axe, a shepherd's pipe, or an altar. So if you just go to Google and type there poems written in the shape of eggs, if you just do that, you will find different types of poems which are written in different shapes. So these poems have been revived. The essayist says these are nothing but falsehood to me. According to me, these are falsehoods. So poems written in the shape of an egg. So obviously it would be oval in shape. So first let us go to the egg-shaped poem. The poem which is in the shape of an egg. So it is a little oval poem. The essayist says, I tried to translate it, but I failed because it was not written in intelligible language, in a kind of language which I understood. I didn't understand the language. So my attempt to translate it failed. The poet had laid, why did he fail? He says, when somebody writes a poem in the shape of an egg, what does he give importance to? He gives importance to the shape and not to the poem or the thought which he wants to express in the poem. The poet had laid much stress on the shape or figure of the poem and not the sense. So because he had not given importance to the sense, he had only given importance to the shape of the poem, I found it very difficult to translate. Then he talks about the poem which was shaped like a pair of wings. He says the pair of wings, these poems consisted of 12 verses. Shape of wings, they were written in the shape of a wing of a bird. Every verse decreased in its measure according to its situation in the wing. You must have seen the wing. In the middle you have the bird, then on both sides you have the wings. So suppose, just imagine there is the wing of the bird and you are writing on the wing. So you can write, some lines will be longer, some lines will be shorter. So some lines will be longer and some lines will be shorter. So the lines decreased in their measure. They decreased or increased depending on where the line occurred. से जो wing रे मु लेखिबी ताकू माने wing shape रे जेतेबेले गोटे लेखिबी मु गोटे egg shape रे लेखिबी egg टा गोटे oval तो मु जदी ऊपर जो line टा लेखिबी naturally it will be smaller, gradually that shape will increase. तापर मझी अंडार मझीटा तमे देखिथिबो it is a little wider, तापर तळ आडू कोन हेछि again shorter. सेमती wing टा तमे जेतेबेले देखिथिबो wing टा जेतेबेले देखिथिबो सेतेबेले some lines will be bigger, some lines will be smaller. So see, what the essayist is talking about, the writers who give importance to these forms of writing, they give more importance to the shape. Shape for them is more important than the sense, than the sense that the poem conveys. So for them, sense is not important, meaning is not important. What idea you get from there is not very important. What is important for them? The structure is more important. The shape is more important. So the writer says the subject has some remote affinity, some sort of closeness with the shape. You can say, sir, why it was written in the shape of a wing? Because it describes the God of love. That poem describes the God of love, who is always painted with wings. God has wings. So naturally, it was written in the form of wings. Then there are the third kinds of poems which are shaped like axes, tangia. Tangia bhaliya shape tar. The axe would have been a good figure for a lampoon had its edge consisted of the most satirical part of the work. Lampoon is something that you write, to criticize somebody, to make fun of somebody. So if you had written something, if you had written the poem on the edge of the axe, then the writer says, okay, that would have given you some meaning. टांगियार सबुठु इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट कोटा टांगियार सबुठु इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट होछि तार एज टा कारण ता सेही एज रे हमें गछटा को काटी परिबा बा दुष्टामी को काटी परिबा दुष्ट शक्ति को काटी परिबा तेणु सेमिति जदि हे थांता सेठी जदि हमने मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ द पोएम लिखा हे थांता ताले दैट वुड हैव बीन मीनिंगफुल बट द essayist takes it as a poesy is a poem or poetry of an axe which was consecrated to Minerva. Minerva, my dear students, is the Roman goddess of wisdom. He is alluding to, this is called allusion. When you are writing something, you refer to or allude to, A-L-L-U-D-E, you allude to something that was written years ago. That was written in Greek literature, Roman literature, Latin literature, and you are alluding, you are referring to those. So this is allusion. He says, this was consecrated. Consecrated is made sacred. This was devoted to Minerva, and which Epius used in the building of the Trojan horse. You must have all heard about the Trojan war. The horse was built by Epius. Epius was a master carpenter. He made the horse. The Greeks, they left the horse outside Troy, outside the boundary of Troy. There was a huge wall. The Greeks could not penetrate. They could not enter or they could not break through that wall. They made a horse's stomach. They kept the stomach of the horse empty, and through that 4, 5, 6 very skillful soldiers, they entered and sat inside, lay inside. They kept it outside that. And they pretended as if they had left the place. So after a few days, the soldiers of Troy must have marked that they have left the horse. The Greeks, pretending to desert the war, sailed to the nearby island of Tenedos, leaving behind Sinon, who persuaded the Trojans that the horse was an offering to Athena. Athena was the Greek goddess of war. That would make Troy impregnable. That if you take this horse and present it to Athena, the goddess of war, then your country, your state will remain impregnable. I mean, nobody can enter into your country. So you should better take this horse. And somehow those people were, convinced. They took the horse inside, and the soldiers who were hiding inside, they emerged and they fought with them. The poesy was written originally upon the axe, like those which our modern cuttlers inscribe upon the knives. If you buy knives, you see certain things written on them. If you buy cutlery, spoon hela ki ଆଉ କିଛି item hela ଯୋଉଥିରେ which you use to eat, ସେଟା ଦେଖିବ ତମେ ତା ଦେହରେ different things are written. ସେମିତି poem was written in the shape of an axe. Those poems were written in the shape of an axe. The poesy still remains in its ancient shape, although the axe itself is lost. So, what he is talking about here? He is talking about poems which are written in different shapes, where the poet gives more importance to the shapes and not to the sense. Then there was the shepherd's pipe. ତମେ ସବୁ ଦେଖିଥିବ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ମଦ କମ୍ପାନୀର ଆଡଭର୍ଟାଇଜମେଣ୍ଟରେ ବ୍ୟାକ୍ ପାଇପର ସେ ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ଏମିତି ମୁହଁରେ ଗୋଟେ ତୁରୀ ରଖିଲା ଭଳିଆ ରଖିଥିବ ଗୋଟେ ବ୍ୟାକ୍ ପାଇପ୍ ଇଜ ଏ ମ୍ୟୁଜିକାଲ ଇନଷ୍ଟ୍ରୁମେଣ୍ଟ ଆଉ ସେ ପଛରେ ଗୋଟେ ବଡ ଫନେଲ ଥିବ ଆଣ୍ଡ ସେଇଠୁ ବଜେଇଲେ ସେଠି ବାଜିବ ତମେ ବି ପଢିଥିବ ସେ ବ୍ୟାକ୍ ପାଇପର rat ଗୁଡାକୁ ନେଇକି ଯେମିତି ପାଏଡ ପାଇପର ଫ୍ୟାମିଲି you must have read that how he took the rats away ସେ ବିଷୟରେ ବି ପଢିଥିବ. Now let's talk about the shepherd's pipe. This is shaped like a shepherd's pipe. This poem is intensely musical. Why he says this poem is intensely musical? Because it is composed of 9 different kinds of verses. 9 different types of verses are there, and these verses are intensely musical, very musical. With their varying lengths, they resemble the 9 stops of the old musical instrument. Again, in the shepherd's pipe also, the shape was given importance and not the meaning of the poem or the sense that the poem conveyed. Then there are altars. Altar ହେଉଛି ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ଲାଟଫର୍ମ. ତମେ ଦେଖିଥିବ ସଣ୍ଡେ ମାସ୍ ଯୋଉଠି ହୁଏ ଖ୍ରୀଷ୍ଟିଆନ ମାନଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ ଚର୍ଚ୍ଚ ସେମାନେ ଯାଆନ୍ତି ସଣ୍ଡେ ମାସ୍ ପାଇଁ, where they gather, they listen to the priest. The priest stands on an altar, but platform. He stands on a platform, and from where he speaks. It is inscribed with or decorated with the epitaph. Epitaph are the words which are written in memory of a person who has died. Of Troilus, the son of Hecuba. According to Greek mythology, Troilus is the young prince of Troy, one of the sons of Priam and Hecuba. Hecuba is the queen, Priam is the king, and their son is Troilus. So these poems are written as if, ଗୋଟେ ଲୋକ ମରିଗଲା ପରେ ତମେ ଦେଖିଥିବ ତାର ଯେତେବେଳେ ଟୁମଷ୍ଟୋନ୍ କରାଯାଏ, TOMBSTONE, ଟୁମଷ୍ଟୋନ୍ ଯୋଉଠି କରାଯାଏ ସେଠି some words must be written. He was born on this day, he died on this day, then 4-5 lines on that, devoted to that man, the characters of that man, what kind of a person he was, or some famous sayings by him, some words devoted to him. So ସେଇଭଳି ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ସେଠି ଏଇ ଅଲ୍ଟାର ସେପ୍ର ଗୁଡେ ପୋଏମ୍ସ ମଧ୍ୟ ଲେଖା ହେଇଥିଲା. Now the essayist talks about who can be very